Okay, so what I would say is thank you for bearing with me. The wonders of technology. So Apple decided to upgrade my Mac, and then all the settings had to be restarted. So never mind, let's start again. So hopefully you can now see my first slide, yes? Can you just confirm that you can see my first slide before I go any further? Brilliant, okay, brilliant, okay. So, so I've been introduced, but my name is still Debra Lilley, and like you said, I work for Accenture and I look after their European practice for HCM. So that's anything to do with the people apps. The really scary thing here is I've worked with Oracle applications since 1996, which is, oh yes, a long time. Nearly 25 years of working with Oracle applications, mainly with eBusiness Suite until Fusion came along. And Fusion applications, or SaaS cloud applications, whatever you want to call them, are nearly 10 years old. So whilst they're new to a lot of people, they've been around for a while. And I'm really dedicated to user groups. I feel that learning is something that we all need to do, and to make that happen we all need to be able to educate each other. It doesn't have to be formal like this, but we should all share our experiences, and I really believe in user groups. And I'm incredibly privileged to be an Oracle ACE director, and that has enabled me to in person be part of several Latin America tours. So whilst it's very sad that I'm not there with you, and I'm looking out of my window and the wind is really strong and it's pouring with rain, so I would love to be in Latin America, but it's lovely to be with you here through this modern technology. So this is where I live, where that red mark is. So I live near Belfast, which is Northern Ireland, which is part of the United Kingdom. But what I love to do is be in the water, and this is me just a few weeks ago. The water here is very cold. It's about 12 degrees Celsius. I'm not sure if you use Celsius or Fahrenheit, but it's cold. But that's what I love. I love to be in the water. So first of all, this is my warning. Every Oracle presentation starts with a safe harbor statement saying, you know, this is what's happening in the future. It might not be what they say. For me, I'm saying be really careful about what you hear today after today. So if this is recorded or the slides are shared, check what I've said, because although I believe them to be correct today, what's great about cloud is that we have this continuous innovation, which means it's always changing. So the title of this presentation I have given for several years, but the content changes all of the time as Oracle add more and more into the products. And so if you are looking at this in the future, just check to see if anything's been added. So let's start with a myth. So SaaS, or software as a service, that's the Oracle cloud applications, or sometimes known as Fusion. They're sealed, and that means that you can't customize it. So if you were using eBusiness Suite or JD Edwards or PeopleSoft or Siebel or any on-premise applications, even if they're not Oracle, we were able to customize those. So developers were able to go into the schema, add tables, change columns, add logic. We were able to customize it to do what we wanted it to do. Okay, you can't do that in SaaS. You cannot get into the database, into the schema. You cannot get into the code. So you can't change it. That's one of the things about cloud, is you can't get under the covers. Now, that means you can't customize it, but you can extend it. And there are a number of ways that you can extend it, and that's exactly what this presentation is about. You can do that through configuration. You can add fields through flex fields. You can coexist a third-party application, and that might be an application that you build yourself. And you can do integrations. You can use robotic processing. You can use chatbots. There's lots of things that you can do to extend it, but you're not customizing it. And so what I'm saying is, you cannot go into the code or the schema of the application, but we can do things to extend it. And that means everybody. So Oracle tell you can't do it. I will tell people at the start of a project you can't do it, and then we'll come up against a challenge in a few weeks after we've started, and the developer will say, oh, I can do that, I'll just run a SQL script. And I look at them and I say, and how are you going to run that SQL script? You can't. There's no database connection. There's no, you cannot bypass the application, right? So you can't customize it, but you can extend it. And that's what we're going to look at now. So I said it was an innovation. You get this continuous innovation. And when people are buying cloud, be it the applications, the SaaS or the PaaS part of it, or even the infrastructure, cloud comes with a promise of continuous innovation. And what that means is they're going to constantly be adding more to the product. And they always have done. Oracle have always put new functionality in new versions of their software. But what happens is we decide when we want that. We decide, when are we going to take 19C of the database? When are we going to take release 12 of Business Suite or whatever? And that doesn't happen in the cloud. In the cloud, it's pushed out to you, and you get that next release with the applications every 3 months. And so they're constantly putting more innovation into the platform. Now, they themselves have baked into what you buy some innovation already. So there's applied intelligence in recruiting. So the ability to look at the data and learn from it. Machine learning in supply chain. Again, it's using the data that comes in to help the system react to what's going on. And digital assistant skills in all of the modules. I'll particularly talk about HCM in a minute. So what they're doing is they're saying, hey, there's all this brilliant technology that's becoming really powerful. We will add that to our SaaS and make it available for you. You yourself can extend it with the digital assistant platform. So Oracle will provide me with skills. So think of Alexa or whatever, and you can. Sure. I knew that was going to happen. Sorry, don't ever say that word when you're presenting if you haven't unplugged your special devices, because they talk back to you. Yeah, so the Oracle Digital Assistant is a platform. Oracle provide content for it for their applications, but you can build more content on that platform. We can use the autonomous database, and really exciting innovation that's happened over the last 3 months for HCM, a little bit longer for finance. But Oracle have built an analytics platform specifically for SaaS. So basically they've taken the analytics cloud and the autonomous data warehouse, and they are bringing data from the SaaS application and giving you pre-built warehouse schemas and analytics, but allowing you to use that platform to build other information in there. So again, they're making that technology innovation available to SaaS. Machine learning libraries, analytics I've talked about. And then you can also extend on using open source, using robotics, using Internet of Things. I've seen just this week, I've seen a couple of examples where people are extending using blockchain. So it lives with all of these components really well. So we extend, if you want to use the Oracle products, we extend using the Oracle platforms services, which is their tooling, their development tools. So, you know, application development, so we can actually write additional applications and run them side by side. We can use the analytics. We can use API catalogs, mobility, create mobile apps, data management, blockchain I've talked about, chatbots I've talked about. There's just so much that's in that PaaS stack that we can use to extend them. I can't possibly talk about them all today, but let's talk about some of the most common ones. So first of all, I would say that the main concept is we are doing whatever we're doing to extend it outside of the application. And then we're bringing our extension and the application together. And that requires integration. So if you think about any applications project, there will be something that you need to integrate it with. In my world, in the HCM world, the most common one is payroll. Unless you're using Oracle Payroll, and Oracle Payroll is not available in all countries, I'm going to take a punt here, and I think it's probably only Mexico in Latin America. But I'm not sure about that, so don't hold me to that. But if you don't have Oracle Payroll, then you're going to have to integrate to your payroll provider or another payroll system that you run yourself. It might be that you need to integrate it with your finance system if you're not using Oracle Finance. There will be other systems that you need to integrate it with. But if you want to build an extension, then you need to integrate it with that. And the integration is the same, whatever the third party, the non-Oracle SaaS application is, integration is the same. So you can do, you can use any integration products you've got. It must be nice to be an Oracle salesman, that you sit down with a customer and you say, oh, here's our wonderful application and here's the integration that you need to run it. And I absolutely think that Oracle's Integration Cloud is brilliant, but an organization may well have an existing investment in another integration platform. And it would be wrong to say, throw that away and use ours, however much I love the Oracle Integration Cloud. So quite often we work with customers with their existing integration platform, and it works just as well. The advantage of the Oracle Integration Cloud is that it knows the Oracle applications, and therefore part of the work is done for you. It also has a lot of design patterns so that you know the best way to do different types of integrations to and from Oracle products. My personal belief is, and I don't know who's on this call, so if you're from Oracle, you know, I hope I'm not breaking the party line, but I believe that the Oracle, especially the Oracle tools, are enterprise class tools. That means that they will work with anything in your organization, but the investment needs to be looked at from that point of view. So, you know, people might say, oh, analytics is expensive, or integration cloud is expensive, or whatever. If you just take that one piece of work that needs to be done, it's not cost effective. If you look at all of the integrations that need to be done across your organization, then it's super, super efficient. And I have many customers who come to us and they don't have an integration platform, and they buy integration cloud, and then they very quickly into the project they say, hey, our next project's going to be to put everything else onto this integration cloud because it's so easy to use. And that's where its value really stacks up, is as an enterprise tool. So that was the sales bit over. I really feel like I sounded like a salesperson then. I didn't mean to. So how do those integrations work? Well, they will use whatever it is that you need to use. So, you know, modern apps development today, you know, you tend to have a lot of APIs. It might be that you're using, you're moving files around. A very, very common, you know, people have always had extracts to and from applications, and again we still have that ability for you. So it's really what's necessary for you, but the integration cloud makes that very simple and allows you in a very visual way to make those integrations happen. And then the PaaS platform also allows for modern application development. So a whole load of tools. This isn't a technical session. I think Lucas has already spoken today. He probably talked at great length about some of these tools that were there to actually build applications. But the PaaS platform allows you to do that. Where I'm interested in is where we're doing that to extend our SaaS applications. I've said that I think that they're enterprise tools. Most of them are on a pay-as-you-go, the universal credits type costing, but there are some that have got what they call an Oracle, a PaaS for SaaS SKU, which means you're only paying them against your application, things like digital assistants. So before we look at what to build it in, let's take the constraints. Now, I'm not saying that these are bad things. What I'm saying is you need to understand what you can and can't do. So it's not as simple as saying there is no database connection. Let's have a look at the different components that we need to build any extension, and then look and see how we, it's not about getting around them, it's about working with those constraints. And it's probably worthwhile saying those constraints are there for a reason. They're not there to annoy you. They're not there to make life difficult for you. They're there because when we did customize our applications, they became a nightmare to manage. They became expensive to manage. They became the barrier to you to upgrade, and they became, you know, quite cumbersome applications. And then you got faults in them because of so many different combinations. Advantage of the cloud is that everybody is on the same version, everybody is on the same hardware, everyone's on the same operating system, everyone's on the same database and the same version of the database. And that means that the number of combinations that need to be tested are much less. And that means that it's a more reliable system for you and less likely to be at risk by something that you may have introduced for the right reasons. Okay, so we need to get the data out of our application. Initially, the only real way of doing that was to use BI Publisher. or perhaps a data extract, depending on which model you were using. I, at the time, and we're probably going back 4 or 5 years now, I was quite disappointed because I thought, oh, modern apps development, we should be using APIs, right? But when Oracle released Fusion Applications as a cloud application, there was no PaaS. At the time, we just had applications as a cloud or infrastructure as a cloud. And therefore, there was no need to, or there was not really a way of extending. Now, as people have wanted to extend and that framework has been put in place, we need to see more APIs. And they are coming. Well, that's not fair. They are there. More are coming regularly. I sat through a planning session yesterday with my teams around what's coming in the next release of the application, and there were lots more APIs or enhancements to existing APIs. So it's getting much, much easier to, so if your integration platform needs an extract, that's fine. If you want to do API to API, that's available as well in most cases now. Interestingly, APIs have really benefited from Digital Assistant. So a Digital Assistant requires a REST API to move data or to interrogate the data. And there were APIs available, but they didn't follow the security that's in the application. So for instance, if I gave a developer access to the employee API, then they could see everything about everybody. And that's fine for the need to extract data and put it into the payroll system. That's absolutely fine. But if you think about a digital assistant, I don't want somebody to ask a chatbot, what does my manager get paid? That's not a question that the application would allow them to know the answer to. So that requires an API that contains the security model that's in the application. And in order to write the skills for the chatbots, that's exactly what Oracle have done. They have written secured APIs that follow that security. Now that's brilliant for the chatbot. So if I say, what's my boss's salary? It will say, you don't have access to this information. Because I don't have access to it in the application, it's not going to share that with me in a chatbot. But it also means that that API is now in the repository and can be used by developers who want to do some other kind of extension, be it an application, be it a different chatbot skill, be it something for a mobile app, whatever. That API is now also available to them. Now, the bit that's hard to get your head around is you cannot call your extension from inside a process. There is no way to change a process in the application and say, hey, I'd like you to go off and do this thing. If it's not part of the application, it won't allow you to do that. So initially, we had this situation whereby what we needed to do was say, okay, well, we can put a button on the front page and you can run the process from there, the new process from there, but it's not part of the initial one. And that's still true today, although we don't have to press a deep link button. It's a bit more integrated than that. But actually, we can trigger a new process. So it doesn't require any manual intervention. So I'm working with a customer at the moment. When they hire a new person and they save the record for that new person, that creates a database event, and that event can be used by the integration cloud to kick off a new process that's within integration cloud. And they're using it to take the email address that's been typed in, go to their email system and create that email account, and then federate their single sign-on. So that is a new process. It's not an existing process, it's a new process, but instead of someone having to press a button, it's actually triggered by an event in the database of saving that new employee record. Initially, we had to call that PAS manually. We could add a button to the front page using Page Composer, but from release 10, and we're now on release 20, but on release 10, we were able to actually add it to our menu through standard functionality, and that also gives us a single sign-on. And it also gives us an iframe, a pop-up window where we can run that extension in there. And then when we finish the process that we were doing in the extension, and we close that window, we're where we were when we left. So the SaaS application doesn't time out, it doesn't move on anywhere else, it stays where it was. Also, if you've got an extension, you might need to return data to your SaaS application. We can do that either through automating some kind of file loader. The different modules have different types of file loader, or we can use the API if that exists. So bringing data back in is also good. And then what we can't do, because we couldn't break into a process and add this as a new process, sorry, as a new component of an existing process, we have to add it as a new process. We can't move on to the next step in the process. So they're always standalone processes. So like I said, it can be triggered by an event, but that new process cannot go back into the original process that we were in. But once you understand those constraints, it's pretty easy to get on with it. Now, the most common extension that we see is doing something to the data that the application doesn't do as standard functionality. That might be that you have an additional calculation to make that isn't catered for because it's industry specific, or it's specific just to your organization. It might be that so for instance, you could give people a salary pay rise based on the rate of inflation, but you might actually want to also compare it to other organizations in your industry. Well, it doesn't do that as standard, but what we can do is we can do an extract of that data, and actually as part of that extract, so we write a report to do the extract, but as part of that report, it does that new calculation, and then the output of that report goes straight into an interface file to be updated in the system. So we're not updating the data directly in a report. You can't do that in a report. A report is read only, but we can manipulate that data and then put it back in through an interface. And that's a very common extension. So it doesn't even go to another system. It gets done and returned in-house. So there are lots of different ways that we get that data out. So I've said that it can be from a customer application, it can be a scheduled extract, it can be a HCM extract, it can be generic, it can be for a specific legal entity, it can be an Atom feed, it can be a REST API, depending on how people need it. And sometimes we use a combination. So there are lots of different technology components that are available to us, and it's just what's best for your extension. So when we've written that extension, be it just a change of data or whatever we have done with it, we then run the two of them alongside each other as coexistence. And actually writing that extension, what tool should you use? So Debra Lilley says that she prefers VBCS, and I'll explain why. I know that's not top of the list, but I'll explain why. So Oracle originally wrote Fusion using Application Developer Framework, ADF, right, which is part of the Java Cloud Service. And that's the way that they wrote the original Fusion. But I said at the beginning of this presentation that those applications are now nearly 10 years old. And so over the last few years, Oracle, well, constantly they've been improving new ways of looking at the UI. The user experience in Fusion is really good. And over the last few years, they've moved especially the self-service content to a jet-based technology. And the reason for that is because it's device sensitive. So, you know, you can run it on a mobile, you can on your mobile phone, you can run it on a PC, you can run it on an iPad, whatever. And it takes the form of that device. So it's device responsive, and it means that you don't need to write special mobile apps. If you want to have the same user experience in your extension, and remember, I can add it to my menu so the end user doesn't know that they've left the Fusion application, gone into your extension and come back, then I would recommend using VBCS because it's jet-based and it's how Oracle are writing their, you know, the UX that they're using within the application. If you're looking at a more professional user screen, i.e., you know, someone who's entering lots and lots of data, then ADF might be the right way to do that. However, the question I always get asked is, why can't I use Apex? And the answer is absolutely no reason at all why you don't use Apex. There are lots of reasons for using Apex. It's by far the cheapest option because it's part of the database cloud. It's incredibly quick to develop. There are amazing skills in our community from Apex, and help from the Oracle development community on Apex is phenomenal. It has a brilliant user interface. It is not identical to the one that Oracle are using in Fusion, but it's pretty damn good. And actually, if you're only got a small part of your organization using it, then I would absolutely recommend Apex because the value and the speed to develop is, you know, a real winner there. You might want to use mobile cloud if you're trying to build a mashup of what's in Fusion and what's in another application. It might be that you want to replicate some of the Fusion so that you can have it offline, because we don't have offline capabilities in Fusion. So I've talked about VBCS. I'm very conscious of the fact that I'm running out of time. I've got a POC that we ran using VBCS, which was taking data from both Fusion Cloud and from EPM, from the workforce planning module in EPM, and creating so based on data that was in the Fusion, the workforce planning module in EPM was determining what the headcount should be, and the customer wanted to be able to model that headcount. So we created something in VBCS to allow them to model that headcount. And then once it had been modeled, it was put back into the Fusion application and approved for their recruitment. I've talked about that. Really powerful is the digital assistant. It's embedded in SaaS. So if you're a HCM user or a finance user, you can buy the skills for that area, but you can extend it. If you're extending it within that module, then there's no extra cost. But if you're going to bring data from a third party, or if you're going to get data from another source, then you need to buy the platform version as well. But I'm not a salesperson. I just do need to talk to your account manager about that. So the difference between a digital assistant and a chatbot, and I am sure you've got some brilliant presentations on this week. To me, it's about the fact that you're having a conversation with a digital assistant who understands that you might not be following a single flow. So if I have this conversation, let's look at this. I'll use the pizza example because everyone uses the pizza example. But if I say I want a pizza, the digital assistant knows that that's a question I want to ask the pizza man. Okay, so it comes back and says, which pizza would you like? I'd like pepperoni. Yes, we're still talking pizzas. And it tells me how much it is. Now, if I then say, can I afford it? There's no way in the world the man in the pizza shop knows whether or not I've got that money. So if I ask the question, can I afford it? The digital assistant will go to a banking skill perhaps. The banking skill will say, your bank balance is $20. Brilliant, I can now afford it. Please deliver my order to. Now, I'm talking at that time to the banking skill. The banking skill does not know that I've placed an order with the pizza skill. It does not know, it doesn't know that at all. But the digital assistant knows that my conversation started with a pizza skill. I have got my information from the banking skill and I've continued my previous conversation. And then the pizza skill says, that'll be 30 minutes. So that's where Oracle have taken the simple chatbot technology and really pushed it and brought this digital assistant, which does so much more than just being able to answer individual questions. So how do we turn that into success? So Oracle have done a whole load. They have done things like, you know, compensation, what am I going to get paid? Where's my application for recruiting? What about when I've, you know, I've started as a new start? Who's my manager? What vacation have I got left? Can I book a day's absence? All of those things can be included, but you can add stuff yourself. So if you've got a third-party time and labor system, you can add a chatbot for that. If you've got a third-party payroll, you can bring back information from that. You can use it to monitor what's going on in your system and then answer questions for people who want to know how the system's being used. We can use it in operations, so from a shared service point of view. Very, very common is the frequently asked questions. And frequently asked questions is just a spreadsheet of questions and answers, and you just upload them into the application and it builds it for you. Very common at the moment is frequently asked questions on coming back to physical buildings, what safety precautions are in place, what are the rules about absences during COVID. So we've seen lots and lots of customers who put in their HCM chatbot who've then added stuff about COVID. So incredibly powerful. As I say, Oracle are releasing more and more APIs all the time. I've got a customer who did just that. Initially, this was with Service Cloud. Their customers are the shops that sell Lilley coffee. And they have a engineer's guide, which is on their chatbot. And it means that if you just want to know how to change the fuse, or you know, the coffee isn't dripping from one spout but it is from another, you know, things that you can do to self-diagnose it. Much easier than reading through that very large manual which may not be in the language that you want it to be in. Really, really has helped their business, and they won an award for it. It was really good. I've written a number of articles or contributed to a number of articles, and you'll get these slides, and there's a number of links there to those articles. So just to sum that up before I take a couple of questions, what you can do is anything. Okay, we have some rules that we have to follow, some constraints that we have to understand, but we can do most things. What you have to ask yourself is, is that cost effective for your organization? How do you want to do that development, and what's the best way to approach it? If you're using Oracle Integration Cloud, then these things are much, much easier, but it's not precluded. If you've got a current investment, we can still use that. So I have seen everybody has some kind of extensions. Some of them are very simple, but some of them are incredibly complex. And, you know, but the same approach applies to all of them. So I believe I've only got a couple of minutes, but do I have any questions?
Hello. Hola a
Hello.
todos. Si tienes preguntas, por favor. Essa é uma boa hora. Si tienes preguntas, puedes poner. Y si no hablas inglés, todo bien, yo puedo hacer la traducción.
So my email's here on the bottom of the screen. And if there are any questions, then they can be emailed to me. What happened, I gave a presentation recently for the All India user group, and they had a really good method. Everybody sent their questions into the user group, and then a couple of days after the event, they were sent out to speakers, and that meant that when we answered them, the answers were then available for everybody. So that would also be a good way of working. But if there are any questions, then, you know, feel free to reach out to me. And I just like to say thank you for having me. And I really hope that next year I can be back there in person.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. That was an amazing presentation. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So that is it. Again, congratulations. Thank you for your time. We learned a lot from you, and hopefully see you soon, maybe next year here in Latin America.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Gracias a todos por estar en esa charla y nos vemos en la próxima presentación en 1 hora. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.